The pregnant bobcat lunged into the churning floodwaters, her jaws closing around the drowning puppy's scruff with gentle precision instead of deadly force. No one witnessing this impossible rescue could have imagined the shocking truth that connected them, a bond that would shatter everything science understood about wild animals. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The raging waters of Copper Creek thundered through the narrow canyon, swollen by 3 days of relentless spring rain. What had once been a gentle stream, winding through the Texas hill country, was now a churning monster, tearing at the banks and uprooting anything that dared stand in its path. On the rain-soaked ridge above the floodwaters, a lone figure watched the chaos below with golden eyes that missed nothing. Luna, a female bobcat heavy with her first litter of kittens, surveyed the destruction with the calm detachment of a predator. Her spotted coat, slick with rain, clung to her frame, highlighting the rounded swell of her belly. In another week, perhaps 2, she would deliver her young. Until then, she needed to keep hunting despite her growing discomfort. The storm had driven most small prey into hiding, making her task all the more difficult. She had been tracking a rabbit when the scent trail led her to this overlook. Now, as she prepared to turn back toward her den in the limestone caves half a mile upstream, a sound caught her attention, distinct from the roar of the floodwaters, a high-pitched, desperate cry that triggered something primal in her brain. Luna's ears swiveled forward, pinpointing the source. There, caught in the branches of a partially submerged cedar, was a small, struggling form. Not a rabbit. Something else. The cries came again, weaker this time, and Luna felt an unexpected tug of recognition. Those weren't the sounds of prey. They were the distress calls of a young, helpless creature, calls not unlike those her own unborn kittens would soon make. 2 miles upstream, Ranger Ellie Harmon clutched the steering wheel of her mud-spattered Jeep as she navigated the slick service road that paralleled Copper Creek. At 32, Ellie had spent the last 7 years as a wildlife conservation officer in Central Texas, but she'd never seen flooding this severe. Dispatch, this is Harmon. I'm at the south entrance to Cooper Preserve, roads barely passable. Any word from the Henderson property? She released the radio button and waited for a response. Ranger Harmon, Henderson Place was evacuated 3 hours ago, but we've got a situation. 9-year-old boy reported his puppy was swept away from their yard before evacuation. Parents couldn't stop him from going after it. Family's safe now, but the puppy's still missing. Ellie closed her eyes briefly. Copy that. Description of the dog? Small, mixed breed, about 12 weeks old, black with white paws, wearing a red collar. I'll keep an eye out, but honestly, in these conditions... She didn't finish the sentence. They both knew the odds. Understood. Be safe out there. Ellie sighed and continued down the road. Her job today was to check the wildlife conservation areas for stranded animals or evidence of habitat destruction. A puppy in the creek was beyond her jurisdiction, technically speaking, but she made a mental note of the description anyway. The rain had finally stopped, but the creek continued to rise as runoff from the hills fed the already swollen waters. Ellie parked at a monitoring station and grabbed her gear, binoculars, first aid kit, satellite phone, and a small drone she used to survey inaccessible areas. The drone had been her own purchase, not department issued, but it had proven invaluable on days like this. As she set up the equipment, movement on the far bank caught her eye. She raised her binoculars and adjusted the focus. A bobcat, female and visibly pregnant. Ellie had been monitoring the local bobcat population for years, and she recognized this one from the distinctive pattern of spots on her left flank. They'd nicknamed her Luna because she was most often spotted during dusk patrols. "Well, hello there, Mama," Ellie murmured. "You should be somewhere dry, not out in this mess." Through the binoculars, she watched as Luna moved with purpose along the edge of the rushing water, her attention fixed on something downstream. Curious, Ellie redirected her gaze to follow the bobcat's line of sight. There, nearly obscured by debris and churning water, was a small, dark shape snagged on a fallen tree. Ellie's heart jumped to her throat as she made out 4 tiny white paws scrabbling desperately at the slippery bark. "No way," she breathed, reaching for her radio. "Dispatch Harmon here. I think I've located the missing puppy. It's alive, caught on a downed tree in Sector 4 of the preserve, but I'm not the only one who's found it." "Say again, Ranger?" "There's a pregnant bobcat stalking it. I'm going to try to reach the puppy first, but I'll need backup." "Copy that. All available units are on flood response. ETA unknown." Ellie swore under her breath. "Understood. I'll do what I can." She gathered her gear, calculating the fastest route to the stranded puppy. She'd need to circle around nearly a quarter mile to find a safe crossing point, and even then, the terrain would be treacherous. By the time she reached the puppy, it might be too late, either claimed by the bobcat or swept away by the rising waters. Luna, meanwhile, had no such limitations. The pregnant bobcat moved with deliberate caution along the muddy bank, her eyes never leaving the struggling form on the fallen tree. The puppy's cries had grown weaker, its efforts to maintain its precarious position clearly failing. One white paw slipped, then another. The little body shifted dangerously toward the rushing current. What happened next would later cause Ellie Harmon to question everything she thought she knew about predator behavior. Luna gauged the distance, muscles tensing beneath her spotted coat. Then, with a powerful leap, she landed on the fallen tree trunk. The impact sent shudders through the waterlogged wood. Carefully, the pregnant bobcat navigated the slippery surface, her claws finding purchase where the puppy's smooth paws could not. "No, no, no," Ellie whispered, watching through her binoculars as she hurried along the far bank. She was still too far away to intervene. "Don't you dare eat that puppy, Luna." But Luna wasn't displaying hunting behavior. There was no predatory stalk, no attacking pounce. Instead, she approached the exhausted puppy with an almost gentle demeanor. The puppy, too frightened and tired to flee, cowered against the bark, shivering violently. Luna lowered her head. Ellie held her breath, expecting to see jaws close around the puppy's neck in a killing bite. Instead, with delicate precision, the bobcat grasped the loose skin at the back of the puppy's neck, exactly as she would carry one of her own kittens. "Impossible," Ellie breathed. In one smooth motion, Luna lifted the puppy from its precarious perch. The little dog went limp in her grasp, an instinctual response to being carried this way. The bobcat turned, carefully retracing her steps along the log toward the shore, the puppy dangling from her mouth like a kitten. The fallen tree shifted suddenly, its root ball finally giving way to the relentless force of the floodwaters. Luna leapt for the bank, her pregnant body moving with surprising agility despite her burden. She landed on solid ground just as the tree was swept away in a churn of white water and splintering wood. Ellie stood frozen in disbelief, her binoculars still raised. In all her years of wildlife study, she'd never witnessed anything like this. Predators did not rescue potential prey, especially not at risk to themselves. It defied explanation. Luna paused on the bank, setting the puppy down gently. The bedraggled little dog wobbled on unsteady legs, then collapsed in exhaustion. For a long moment, the bobcat stood over the puppy, her tail twitching slightly as she studied the small creature she had saved. Then, with a gentle nudge of her nose, Luna prompted the puppy to its feet. When it could not rise, she once again took it by the scruff and began carrying it away from the floodwaters, heading toward the ridge and the limestone caves beyond. "Where are you taking it?" Ellie whispered, already moving to follow. This was unprecedented behavior. A pregnant predator rescuing and now apparently adopting a species that should have registered as either threat or prey. Everything she had learned in her career told her this was impossible, yet she was witnessing it with her own eyes. She raised her radio again. "Dispatch, you're not going to believe what I'm seeing. The Bobcat didn't attack the puppy. She rescued it. She's carrying it away right now, and I'm following at a safe distance." "Say again, Ranger Harmon, it sounded like you said the Bobcat rescued the puppy." "Affirmative. She carried it off the log by the scruff, just like it was her own kitten. I've never seen anything like it. I'm tracking them now." As Luna disappeared into the underbrush with her unlikely charge, Ellie couldn't help but wonder what could possibly explain this extraordinary behavior. What she couldn't know was that the explanation would prove even more remarkable than the rescue itself, a truth that would challenge our understanding of the natural world and the complex beings with whom we share it. Luna moved with purpose through the rain-soaked underbrush, the puppy hanging limply from her jaws. Despite her pregnancy, she navigated the uneven terrain with the fluid grace inherent to her species, pausing occasionally to adjust her grip on her unlikely charge. The weight of the puppy, though small, was an unwelcome burden on her already taxed body, but something stronger than instinct drove her forward. Behind her, Ellie Harmon followed at a careful distance, moving as quietly as her human limitations allowed. Years of fieldwork had taught her the art of tracking without disturbing, though she suspected Luna was well aware of her presence. The Bobcat had always been unusually tolerant of human observation, one of the reasons Ellie had been able to document so much of her behavior over the years. "Where are you taking him, girl?" Ellie whispered more to herself than the Bobcat. She kept her binoculars ready, documenting this unprecedented behavior with periodic photos from her weatherproof camera. This was the kind of observation that could redefine understanding of predator psychology, if she could figure out what was motivating it. The limestone ridge rose before them, a pale gray sentinel against the darkening sky. The rain had stopped completely now, but the air remained heavy with moisture, and in the distance thunder rumbled a reminder that the storm hadn't fully passed. Luna angled toward a crevice in the rock face, a narrow opening that Ellie had documented as one of the Bobcat's regular shelters. The ranger stopped a respectful distance away, raising her binoculars to watch as Luna carefully maneuvered through the opening with her burden. The puppy had remained remarkably still throughout the journey, instinctively responding to being carried by the scruff as many young mammals do. "Dispatch, Harmon here," Ellie spoke softly into her radio. "The Bobcat has taken the puppy to a den site in the limestone ridge at the north end of Sector 4. I'm maintaining observation." "Copy that, Ranger. Any signs of aggression toward the animal?" "Negative. If anything, her behavior is maternal. She's handling it exactly as she would one of her own kittens." There was a pause before the dispatcher responded. "The Henderson boy is asking about his puppy. What should we tell him?" Ellie sighed, watching the entrance to Luna's den. "Tell him we've located his puppy and it's currently safe, but recovery may take some time due to the conditions." It wasn't entirely a lie. The puppy did appear to be safe, at least for now. But Ellie had no idea what would happen once Luna had the small dog secured in her den. Would the predatory instinct finally take over? Or was there something else at play here, something that defied conventional wildlife behavior? She settled in to wait, setting up a small observation blind from her pack. If Luna followed her usual patterns, she would emerge again before dusk to hunt, regardless of the weather. That would give Ellie a chance to potentially approach the den and check on the puppy. As she waited, Ellie reviewed what she knew about Luna. The Bobcat had first appeared in the preserve 3 years ago, already distinctive for her unusual tolerance of human presence. Most Bobcats fled at the first sign of people, but Luna had always seemed almost curious, watching from a safe distance rather than immediately retreating. The wildlife team had fitted her with a tracking collar last year during a routine population study, though the collar had since been removed when they recaptured her for a health assessment 6 months ago. The data from that collar had revealed something interesting. Luna's territory overlapped significantly with human settlements, more so than any other bobcat they monitored. "You're a boundary crosser, aren't you?" Ellie murmured, focusing her binoculars on the den entrance. "Not quite wild, not quite tame. Is that why you saved the puppy?" Inside the limestone den, Luna gently deposited her burden on the dry soil floor. The small cave extended back about 15 feet into the ridge, with a narrow chimney-like opening that provided ventilation while keeping out the rain. It was cool and dark, the perfect refuge from both the storm and potential threats. The puppy, finally released from the gentle grip of Luna's jaws, lay panting on the ground, too exhausted to move. Its black coat was soaked and matted, the red collar stark against its fur. Small body trembling with cold and fear, it watched the bobcat with wide, uncertain eyes. Luna circled the puppy slowly, sniffing it thoroughly. Something about its scent triggered a complex cascade of emotions and memories, things that existed beneath conscious thought, in the realm of instinct and experience. She lowered herself to the ground near the puppy, her pregnant belly making the movement somewhat awkward, and began to groom the small creature with methodical strokes of her rough tongue. The puppy stiffened at first, then gradually relaxed under the warming ministrations. The bobcat's grooming served multiple purposes, removing the scent of the floodwaters, warming the puppy's chilled body, and establishing a connection between them. After several minutes, the little dog's trembling subsided, and its eyes began to close, exhaustion finally claiming it. Luna continued grooming until the puppy fell asleep. Only then did she settle herself more comfortably, curling her body protectively around the small dog. Her golden eyes remained alert, watching the entrance of the den, while her mind processed the strange events that had led her to adopt this creature that should, by all natural law, have registered as either prey or threat. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when Luna's ears twitched at a sound from outside. Human footsteps, approaching cautiously. She recognized the scent, the human female who often watched from a distance, the one who had once placed the strange collar around her neck and later removed it. Luna had long ago categorized this particular human as non-threatening, though she maintained a healthy wariness. Outside the den, Ellie approached with extreme caution. Almost 3 hours had passed since Luna had taken the puppy into the cave, and no sounds of distress had emerged, a promising sign. Still, she needed to confirm the puppy's condition and determine the best course of action. The Henderson family deserved to know whether their pet was still alive. "Luna?" she called softly, stopping several yards from the entrance. "I just need to check on your guest." She crouched down, making herself smaller and less threatening, and waited. Patience was essential when dealing with wild animals, especially one that had already defied behavioral expectations. After several minutes, a shadow moved at the entrance of the den. Luna appeared, her pregnant form silhouetted against the darker interior of the cave. She regarded Ellie calmly, showing none of the agitation a typical bobcat would display at finding a human so close to her shelter. "Hey there, Mama," Ellie kept her voice low and soothing. "Is our little friend okay?" Luna blinked slowly, then turned and disappeared back into the den. But she didn't go far. She remained visible just inside the entrance, watching. It wasn't an invitation exactly, but neither was it a rejection. Ellie interpreted it as permission to approach, though she did so with appropriate caution. Peering carefully into the dimness of the cave, Ellie's heart melted at what she saw. The puppy was curled up in a small depression in the soil floor, fast asleep and very much alive. More surprisingly, it appeared to have been thoroughly groomed, its black coat now merely damp rather than soaking wet. "Well, I'll be damned," she whispered. Luna stood protectively near the sleeping puppy, her golden eyes fixed unwaveringly on Ellie. There was no aggression in her posture, but the message was clear. The puppy was under her protection now. Ellie nodded, almost as if responding to spoken words. "Okay, I understand. But you know I'll need to come back, right? That little one has a human family." As if in response, Luna lowered herself to the ground beside the puppy, her body language relaxed but vigilant. Ellie took several quick photos, documenting the extraordinary scene, then retreated to her observation point. She needed to report this development and figure out next steps. The behavior she was witnessing had no precedent in her training or experience. She raised her radio. "Dispatch, the puppy is alive and appears unharmed, but we have a situation here that's, complicated." "Define complicated, Ranger Harmon." Ellie laughed softly, the sound carrying a note of wonder. "The Bobcat is actively caring for the puppy, grooming it, protecting it. I've never seen anything like it. I need to consult with the wildlife behavior specialist before we attempt any kind of retrieval." As Ellie made her call, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story, something that would explain Luna's extraordinary behavior. The answer, when it finally emerged, would challenge everything Ellie thought she knew about the boundaries between wild and domestic, instinct and emotion, animal and human. Dr. Marcus Reyes arrived at the preserve just as darkness was settling over the hills. The wildlife behavior specialist had been at a conference in San Antonio when Ellie's call came through, and he'd driven straight to the site, his curiosity too piqued to wait until morning. At 53, with salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of someone who spent more time outdoors than in, Marcus had studied predator behavior across 5 continents, but never had he encountered anything like what Ellie described. "Show me everything you've documented," were his first words as he approached Ellie's observation blind, voice low to avoid disturbing the den's occupants. Ellie handed over her camera and notebook. "I've been keeping a log of all behaviors since first contact. The puppy is approximately 12 weeks old, small mixed breed. Luna has been treating it maternally, grooming, protective positioning, den sharing. No aggression whatsoever." Marcus flipped through the photos, his expression growing increasingly fascinated. "And you're certain she's pregnant?" "Absolutely. Late term, I'd guess. Should deliver within 2 weeks." "Fascinating." Marcus stroked his beard thoughtfully. "There are documented cases of predators showing nurturing behaviors toward prey species, a lioness adopting an oryx calf, for instance, but those are incredibly rare and usually occur when the predator has lost offspring. This," he gestured toward the den, "a pregnant female actively rescuing a different species. I've never seen anything comparable." They settled in to observe together as night fell completely. Marcus unpacked specialized night vision equipment that would allow them to monitor the den without disturbing its occupants with artificial light. "The Henderson family has been calling hourly for updates," Ellie said quietly. "The boy, Tyler, he's 9, is apparently inconsolable. The puppy was a recent adoption, some kind of therapy support animal." Marcus nodded, adjusting his equipment. "And what have you told them?" "That the puppy is alive, but in a situation that requires expert handling. I didn't mention the Bobcat specifically, didn't want them attempting to come out here themselves." "Good call. The last thing we need is well-meaning civilians stumbling around a Bobcat den in the dark." Marcus paused, peering through his night vision scope. "Movement at the entrance." They both watched as Luna emerged from the den, stretching her muscular body in the moonlight. She glanced briefly in their direction. The blind concealed them, but she was clearly aware of their presence. before moving a short distance away to begin grooming herself. "She's leaving the puppy unattended," Ellie noted with surprise. "But staying within protective range," Marcus observed. "Typical maternal behavior. She needs to stretch, groom, possibly even hunt soon, but won't go far from the dependent young. Should we attempt to retrieve the puppy while she's outside?" Marcus shook his head firmly. "Not yet. I want to understand this behavior better before we intervene. Besides, the puppy appears to be in no immediate danger, and attempting to remove it could provoke the very aggression she hasn't shown so far." As if to confirm his assessment, Luna finished her grooming and disappeared into the underbrush, moving silently in the direction of a small meadow where rodents were plentiful. She returned 20 minutes later carrying a rabbit which she took directly into the den. "She's hunting for two now," Marcus murmured, making notes. "Extraordinary." Inside the den, Luna dropped the rabbit near the entrance, away from where the puppy lay sleeping. The small dog had awakened at her return and was watching her with alert, but no longer fearful eyes. Hunger had replaced fear as the puppy's most pressing concern, and the scent of fresh kill filled the small space. Luna settled down to consume her prey, tearing into the rabbit with efficient movements. The puppy whined softly, edging closer, drawn by hunger and the smell of food. Under normal circumstances, a wild predator would guard its kill aggressively, even from offspring until they were old enough to hunt independently. But Luna paused in her meal, regarding the approaching puppy with what could only be described as consideration. After a moment, she nudged a portion of the rabbit toward the puppy, a small piece of meat, already separated from the carcass. The puppy hesitated only briefly before devouring the offering, its small tail wagging weakly for the first time since its ordeal began. Outside, Marcus and Ellie watched this interaction through the night vision equipment, both too stunned to immediately comment. "She's feeding it," Ellie finally whispered. "Deliberate food sharing," Marcus confirmed, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "Not just permitting access to the kill, but actively portioning and offering. That's intentional caregiving behavior." "But why? Evolutionary biology says she should either see it as prey or competition." Marcus lowered his scope, rubbing his eyes. "Evolutionary biology also says that anomalies are how species evolve. Individual variations in behavior sometimes lead to adaptive advantages." He paused. "But you're right. This requires explanation. I think we need to learn more about Luna's history." As dawn approached, bringing with it the promise of a clear day after the storm, Ellie and Marcus took turns monitoring the den while the other rested. The puppy had grown more active overnight, apparently recovering from its exhaustion, while Luna continued to display protective behaviors, including responding to the puppy's vocalizations and maintaining physical proximity. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding Luna's territory overlapping with human settlements," Marcus said as they shared coffee from Ellie's thermos. "How extensive is that overlap?" Ellie pulled out her tablet, bringing up Luna's tracking data from when she wore the collar. "See for yourself. She regularly visits the outskirts of 3 different neighborhoods plus a farm on the south edge of the preserve. Most bobcats avoid those areas completely." Marcus studied the data, his brow furrowing. "These aren't just brief incursions. She's spending significant time in these locations, almost as if she's comfortable around humans," Ellie finished. "That's always been my assessment, but comfort is different from what we're seeing now. This is active caregiving toward a domestic species." "I think," Marcus said slowly, "that we need to investigate those locations more thoroughly, particularly this cluster of visits." He pointed to an area on the map where Luna had spent repeated time at the edge of a rural neighborhood. There might be something in her history that explains her current behavior. As they were discussing next steps, Ellie's radio crackled to life. "Ranger Harmon, come in." "Harmon here," she responded. The Henderson family is at the preserve entrance. They're insisting on information about their puppy. The boy is quite upset. Ellie sighed, exchanging a glance with Marcus. Copy that. Tell them I'll meet them at the visitor center in 20 minutes. After signing off, she turned to Marcus. I should handle this. These people lost their home to flooding, and now their child's puppy is being held hostage by a bobcat. Not exactly a situation the crisis management handbook covers. Marcus nodded. Go. I'll continue monitoring here. But Ellie, he added as she gathered her things, be careful what you tell them. The last thing we need is for them to attempt some kind of rescue mission. The puppy appears healthy and cared for. We have time to understand what's happening before we intervene. The visitor center was a modest log building at the main entrance to the preserve, currently serving as an impromptu relief center for families affected by the flooding. When Ellie arrived, she immediately spotted the Hendersons, a tired-looking couple in donated clothes standing next to a small boy whose red-rimmed eyes and slumped shoulders spoke volumes about his emotional state. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. Ellie approached them, offering her hand. I'm Ranger Ellie Harmon. I understand you're concerned about your puppy. Ranger Harmon. Mrs. Henderson clasped her hand gratefully. This is my husband Tom and our son Tyler. We've been told you found Buddy. Buddy? Ellie repeated. Our puppy. Tyler spoke up, his voice small but insistent. His name is Buddy. He's black with white paws and a red collar. Is he okay? Ellie crouched down to Tyler's level, choosing her words carefully. Buddy is alive, Tyler. We've confirmed that. But he's in a special situation that makes it tricky for us to bring him back right away. What kind of situation? Tom Henderson asked, his arm protectively around his son's shoulders. Ellie stood, addressing the parents. Your puppy was rescued from the floodwaters, but not by us. He's currently in a den with a wild bobcat who, for reasons we're still trying to understand, has taken him in rather than seeing him as prey. She watched their expressions shift from confusion to disbelief. A bobcat has our dog. Mrs. Henderson's voice rose slightly. And you just left him there? It's not quite that simple, Ellie explained. The bobcat is displaying protective maternal behavior toward Buddy. She's feeding him, grooming him, keeping him safe. We have a wildlife behavior specialist on site monitoring the situation. Attempting to remove Buddy too aggressively could endanger both animals. But he's our dog, Tyler protested, tears welling in his eyes. Buddy needs me. I'm his person. Ellie's heart ached for the boy. I understand, Tyler, and we're going to get Buddy back to you, I promise. But we need to do it in a way that's safe for everyone. How long will that take? Tom asked, the strain evident in his voice. I don't know yet, Ellie admitted. But I can show you proof that Buddy is okay right now. Would that help? Tyler nodded eagerly, and Ellie pulled out her tablet, bringing up the most recent photos she'd taken of the puppy in the den. See? That's Buddy right there. He's dry, he's been fed, and he's safe from the flood. The boy studied the image intently. Why is the bobcat being nice to him? It was the million-dollar question, the one Ellie and Marcus were desperately trying to answer. But looking at Tyler's worried face, Ellie suddenly wondered if the explanation might be simpler than they were making it. Sometimes, she said gently, animals surprise us with their capacity for kindness, just like people do. After showing Tyler the photos of Buddy, Ellie managed to negotiate a temporary peace with the Henderson family. They would return to their emergency shelter, and Ellie promised twice daily updates on Buddy's condition. Tyler insisted on giving Ellie his favorite toy dinosaur, a well-loved T-Rex with chew marks suspiciously similar to what puppy teeth might leave, to pass along to Buddy so he remembers me. Ellie took the toy with appropriate solemnity, though she had no intention of disturbing the delicate dynamic in Luna's den by introducing foreign objects. Instead, she placed the dinosaur in her pocket as she drove back to the observation site, a tangible reminder of the human stakes in this unusual wildlife situation. When she returned, Marcus was packing up his overnight equipment, replaced now by more sophisticated monitoring devices. A small camouflaged camera positioned to view the den entrance and sensitive microphones to capture sounds from inside. "How did it go with the family?" he asked, not looking up from his work. "About as well as could be expected. The boy is heartbroken but calmer now that he's seen proof Buddy is alive. I bought us some time, but we can't leave the puppy with Luna indefinitely." Marcus nodded, finally meeting her eyes. "I agree. But removing him requires understanding what's happening first. I think I have a lead." He gestured for Ellie to follow him to his vehicle, where he'd set up a makeshift workstation on the tailgate of his truck. His laptop displayed a satellite map of the area, with Luna's tracking data overlaid in red lines. "I've been cross-referencing Luna's movements with local property records and social media," he explained. "This cluster of visits centered around a property owned by a family named Garcia. They're active on several platforms, and guess what I found?" He clicked to a Facebook photo showing a Hispanic woman in her 60s sitting on a porch with 2 Bobcat kittens in her lap. The caption read, "Mama passed by car. 2 weeks of bottle feeding before wildlife rehab picks them up. Wildlife rescue." "That's Luna," Ellie said immediately, recognizing the distinctive spot pattern on one of the kittens. "Posted 3 years ago, which matches when Luna first appeared in the preserve. And there's more." Marcus clicked through several more photos showing the kitten's progress. The Garcias are registered wildlife rehabilitators, but they specialize in domestic animals. They run a small rescue operation from their property. "Look at this one." The next photo showed the same Bobcat kitten, unmistakably Luna, curled up asleep next to a litter of puppies. The caption read, "The orphans have become friends. Luna and the pups sleep together now. Will this cause problems for her release? Wildlife Department says separating them soon is critical." Ellie stared at the image, the pieces falling into place. She was raised alongside puppies during a critical socialization period. "Exactly," Marcus said, his voice tense with excitement. "Imprinting works both ways. Luna doesn't just tolerate humans because they fed her. She spent her early development with domestic dogs. She's imprinted on them as non-threatening, possibly even as social companions. But taking one in as if it were her own offspring," Ellie challenged, "that's a significant leap from not seeing it as prey." "True," Marcus acknowledged, "but consider her current state: pregnant, hormones elevated, maternal instincts in overdrive. The puppy's distress calls likely triggered those instincts. It's not unprecedented. There are documented cases of female mammals adopting other species when their maternal drive is activated." Ellie pondered this as she looked toward the den. "We need to talk to the Garcias, find out exactly how they rehabilitated Luna, what protocols they followed." "Already reached out," Marcus said. "They're back home after evacuating during the flood. They've agreed to meet us this afternoon." He hesitated. "There's something else, though. Before we go, you should see what happened while you were gone." He led Ellie back to the monitoring equipment and pulled up footage captured during her absence. On the screen, Luna emerged from the den, the puppy following close behind her. The Bobcat moved cautiously, frequently looking back to ensure the puppy was still there. She led the small dog to a sunny patch near the den entrance, where the puppy promptly plopped down, clearly still weak, but noticeably more animated than the day before. What happened next made Ellie's breath catch. Luna began what could only be described as training behavior, the same motions an adult bobcat would use to teach kittens basic skills. She demonstrated a stalking posture, belly low to the ground, then looked expectantly at the puppy. When the puppy merely tilted its head in confusion, Luna repeated the movement, then nudged the puppy with her nose until it mimicked her position, albeit clumsily. "She's, teaching it to hunt," Ellie whispered in disbelief. "Or trying to," Marcus agreed. "I've seen mother cats do this with kittens but never cross species. This goes beyond protective care. She's actively socializing it as if it were one of her own. If the puppy stays much longer, it might start identifying more with bobcats than dogs," Ellie said. "That could make reintegration with humans problematic." "Agreed. We need to retrieve it soon, but now I'm equally concerned about Luna. This level of attachment could make separation traumatic for her, especially in her condition." They watched as Luna and the puppy returned to the den, the impromptu hunting lesson apparently concluded. Despite the scientific fascination of the situation, Ellie couldn't help but feel a growing unease. They were witnessing something remarkable, yes, but also something that defied the natural order in ways that could have consequences for both animals involved. Later that afternoon, Ellie and Marcus left the monitoring equipment running while they drove to the Garcia property on the outskirts of town. The modest ranch house sat on 5 acres of land, with several outbuildings visible from the driveway. As they pulled up, a woman who appeared to be in her 60s emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Dr. Reyes," she called. "And Ranger Harmon? I'm Elena Garcia. My husband Miguel will join us shortly. He's just finishing up with a new rescue." Elena led them into a comfortable living room decorated with photographs of animals, many showing the Garcias with various wildlife and domestic rescues. She offered them coffee, which they both accepted gratefully after their night of interrupted sleep. "So," Elena said once they were settled, "you wanted to talk about Luna. I wondered if we might hear from Wildlife Services about her someday." "You remember her specifically?" Ellie asked. Elena smiled. "Of course. We don't rehabilitate bobcats often, and Luna was special. We found her and her brother beside their mother on Route 16. The mother had been hit by a car. The brother didn't make it. Internal injuries, but Luna was physically unharmed, just severely dehydrated and frightened." "Your social media showed her with puppies," Marcus prompted. Elena's expression grew more serious. "Yes, that was unorthodox. We had a litter of shepherd mix puppies at the same time, orphaned at about 3 weeks old. We keep wild and domestic animals strictly separated during rehabilitation, but Luna was failing to thrive. She wouldn't eat, showed signs of depression. Miguel suggested letting her interact with the puppies as an experiment, since they were similar in age and size. The change was immediate and dramatic. She started eating, playing, showing normal kitten behavior. Miguel Garcia entered the room then, a stocky man with kind eyes and calloused hands. "Are you talking about Luna?" he asked, settling beside his wife. "Our little boundary crosser." Ellie's ears perked up at the term, the same one she had used to describe Luna. "You called her that too?" Miguel nodded. "She never fully accepted the boundaries we tried to establish. Most wild rehabs, you work to maintain their fear of humans, their natural behaviors. Luna absorbed everything: wild instincts from her early weeks with her mother, social behaviors from the puppies, comfort around humans from us. By the time the wildlife department took her for release, we were concerned she might be too habituated. But the assessment team determined she had sufficient wild behaviors to survive independently," Elena added. "They released her with a tracking collar to monitor her adjustment." "That would be the collar we later removed," Ellie confirmed. "Her survival skills proved adequate, but her territory has always included human areas." Marcus leaned forward. "The reason we're here is that Luna has done something extraordinary. She rescued a puppy from the floodwaters yesterday and has been caring for it as if it were her own offspring. The Garcias exchanged a look that contained volumes, surprise but not complete shock. She bonded very strongly with those puppies, Elena said slowly. They were her first social group after losing her mother and brother. We were careful to separate them before release, but those early impressions can be powerful. There's something else you should know, Miguel added, his expression growing more somber. One of the puppies in that litter, the smallest one, black with white paws, became particularly bonded with Luna. They were inseparable. When the wildlife team came to take Luna for pre-release conditioning, the separation was difficult. The puppy searched for her for days, crying constantly. Ellie felt a chill run down her spine. This puppy Luna rescued. It's black with white paws and a red collar. Could it possibly be the same dog? Marcus asked. That particular puppy was adopted by a family named Henderson, Elena said, her eyes widening. They specifically wanted him as a therapy dog for their son, who has anxiety. The pieces clicked into place with almost audible force. Ellie pulled out her phone and found a photo of Tyler with Buddy that Mrs. Henderson had shown her at the visitor center. She turned the screen toward the Garcias. Is this the puppy? Elena gasped softly. Yes, that's him. We called him Midnight, but the family renamed him. So Luna didn't just rescue any puppy, Ellie said, her voice hushed with the weight of realization. She rescued a puppy she was raised with, one she was bonded to before they were separated. A puppy she recognized, Marcus added, the scientist in him both stunned and elated by this discovery. This changes everything. The drive back to the observation site was filled with animated discussion as Ellie and Marcus processed this extraordinary revelation. What had seemed like an inexplicable aberration in predator behavior now made a kind of sense, though it remained remarkable. Cross-species bonding during critical developmental periods has been documented, Marcus said, his fingers drumming excitedly on the steering wheel. But rarely with this level of recognition and sustained memory after separation. Most cases involve permanent cohabitation. How long were they separated before the flood? Ellie asked. According to the Garcias, about 7 months. Luna was released into the wild approximately 1 month after the wildlife department took her for pre-release conditioning. Ellie stared out the window at the passing landscape, still showing the scars of the recent flooding. So Luna recognized Buddy after 7 months of separation, during which she returned to her wild state, established territory, found a mate, and became pregnant. Yet she still risked her life to save him from drowning, and continues to care for him as one of her own, Marcus added. It challenges our understanding of animal memory and social bonding. The implications are significant. When they arrived back at the observation site, they immediately checked the monitoring equipment. The footage showed that Luna had ventured out twice more during their absence, each time with Buddy following. During these excursions, she continued the behavior they'd observed earlier, demonstrating hunting postures, teaching the puppy to move quietly through underbrush, even showing him how to drink from a small puddle left by the receding floodwaters. She's not just sheltering him, Ellie observed. She's actively trying to teach him survival skills. Socializing him as she would her own offspring, Marcus agreed. The question now is how we proceed. This information changes our approach considerably. They discussed options as they watched Luna and Buddy return to the den as evening approached. The Bobcat carried a small rodent in her jaws, which she would presumably share with her canine charge inside. We need to involve the Hendersons in the decision-making, Ellie insisted. Buddy is legally their pet, but we also have a responsibility to Luna's well-being, especially given her pregnancy. I'm concerned about the trauma of separation for both animals, Marcus admitted. Luna has already experienced the loss of her mother, brother, and then Buddy once before. Another abrupt separation, particularly while she's pregnant, could cause significant stress that might affect her ability to care for her kittens when they arrive. And Buddy has clearly accepted Luna as a caregiver, Ellie added. Forcibly removing him could be traumatic for him as well. After further discussion, they decided on a course of action. They would invite the Henderson family to the observation site the next morning, explain the situation fully, and work together to develop a gradual transition plan that would minimize trauma for both animals. Ellie made the call, carefully explaining to Mrs. Henderson that they had discovered important information about Buddy's history that could affect how they approached his retrieval. She deliberately kept details vague, wanting to explain in person with Marcus's expertise to back her up. "Bring Tyler," she suggested. "I think it's important for him to understand what's happening, and he might actually be able to help us." That night, Ellie took the first watch while Marcus caught a few hours of sleep in his truck. The camera's night vision capability provided a clear view of the den's interior, where Luna and Buddy had settled into what appeared to be a comfortable routine. The puppy curled against the Bobcat's side, occasionally twitching in his sleep. Luna remained alert, her ears constantly moving to track sounds outside the den, her body positioned protectively around her small charge. "You remember him, don't you?" Ellie whispered, watching the monitor. "He was your family once." Around midnight, something unexpected happened. Luna suddenly became restless, shifting positions and making small sounds of discomfort. Ellie watched with concern as the Bobcat began what appeared to be nesting behavior, scraping at the den floor to create a shallow depression, then lining it with leaves and fur shed from her own coat. "Marcus," Ellie called urgently, not taking her eyes from the monitor. "I think something's happening." Marcus emerged from his truck, instantly alert despite having been woken from a sound sleep. He joined Ellie at the monitor, watching Luna's behavior with growing concern. "Those movements," he said slowly, "they're consistent with early labor." "Labor?" Ellie turned to him in alarm. "But you said she had at least 2 weeks before delivery." "That was my estimate based on her appearance. It's not an exact science with wildlife." Marcus's brow furrowed as he studied Luna's movements. The stress of the flood, the rescue, all of this, it might have triggered premature labor. "Is that dangerous?" "It could be. Premature kittens have lower survival rates, and if she's having complications." He didn't finish the sentence, but his expression conveyed his concern. On the monitor, they watched as Buddy sensed Luna's distress. The puppy circled her anxiously, occasionally licking her face in what appeared to be a comforting gesture. Luna allowed this attention, seeming to draw some comfort from the puppy's presence. "Should we intervene?" Ellie asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it confirmed. Marcus shook his head reluctantly. "Not unless absolutely necessary. Interfering with a wild animal in labor typically causes more harm than good. We'd stress her further, which could worsen the situation. Our presence might even cause her to abandon the kittens. So we just watch? For now, yes. But I'm going to call a wildlife veterinarian friend of mine. If things take a turn, we'll need professional guidance." The hours that followed were tense. Luna's labor progressed slowly, with periods of evident discomfort followed by rest. Buddy remained by her side throughout, his behavior showing a surprising level of empathy for a young dog. When Luna shifted positions or made sounds of pain, he responded with gentle nuzzling and what could only be described as concerned attention. By dawn, it became clear that Luna was experiencing a difficult birth. Her breathing had become labored and her movements showed increasing distress. "This isn't progressing normally," Marcus said grimly, ending another call with his veterinarian colleague. "She should have delivered by now. What are our options?" None good. If we don't intervene, we risk losing Luna and her kittens. If we do intervene, we risk causing her to abandon them even if the birth is successful." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "And we have the Henderson family arriving in less than 2 hours." As if on cue, Ellie's phone rang. Mrs. Henderson, calling to confirm their meeting. Ellie stepped away to take the call, explaining that there had been a development and asking if they could postpone until afternoon. After ending the call, she rejoined Marcus at the monitor. "They'll come at 2 instead of 10, she said. "That gives us a few more hours to see how this plays out." On the screen, Luna had begun panting heavily, her sides heaving with the effort. Buddy remained pressed against her, occasionally licking her face in what seemed like reassurance. "Look at that," Marcus said softly. He's comforting her. It's almost as if he knows what she needs, Ellie finished. They were raised together during a critical development period. Maybe they understand each other in ways we don't fully comprehend. Around 9 in the morning, Luna finally delivered her first kitten, a tiny wet bundle that she immediately began to clean with methodical strokes of her tongue. Buddy watched this process with evident curiosity, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly engaged in what was happening. "One healthy kitten," Marcus noted with relief. "That's promising." Over the next hour, Luna delivered 2 more kittens, each one appearing healthy despite their slightly premature arrival. Throughout the process, Buddy remained a constant supportive presence, never interfering but never leaving Luna's side either. "I've never seen anything like this," Marcus admitted, his scientist skepticism temporarily overcome by the scene unfolding before them. "A puppy assisting at a bobcat birth? This defies everything we understand about interspecies relationships in the wild." By noon, Luna had delivered a total of 4 kittens and appeared to be resting comfortably, her new offspring nursing successfully at her side. Buddy had settled into a protective position at the entrance of the den, as if standing guard over the vulnerable new family. "Now we have an even more complicated situation," Ellie said, rubbing her tired eyes. "Separating Buddy from Luna was already going to be challenging. Now we're talking about separating him from her and her newborn kittens, a family unit that he seems to consider himself part of." Marcus nodded grimly. "And we still have to explain all of this to a 9-year-old boy who just wants his puppy back." At precisely 2 o'clock, the Henderson family's borrowed sedan pulled up beside the Rangers' vehicles at the designated meeting point, a small clearing about 100 yards from Luna's den. Ellie and Marcus had spent the intervening hours debating how best to explain the situation to Tyler. They agreed that honesty was essential, but delivering the information in a way a 9-year-old could process would require careful handling. The family emerged from their car, Tyler clutching a leash and a small bag that presumably contained items for Buddy. The hope and anticipation on his face sent a pang through Ellie's chest. This was going to be harder than she'd imagined. "Ranger Ellie," Tyler called, running toward her. "Did you give Buddy my dinosaur? Is he ready to come home now?" Ellie knelt to his level, meeting his eager gaze. "Tyler, we need to talk about Buddy first. There's something really special about him that we just discovered." Marcus introduced himself to the parents, then suggested they all sit at the small folding table they'd set up under a canopy. Once everyone was settled, Ellie pulled up the tablet displaying the footage from inside Luna's den. "This is where Buddy is right now," she explained, turning the screen so Tyler could see. "That's Luna, the bobcat who rescued him from the flood." Tyler leaned forward, his eyes widening as he took in the image of Buddy curled protectively near Luna and her kittens. "She had babies," he whispered, "and Buddy is helping take care of them." "Yes," Marcus said gently. "Luna gave birth to her kittens this morning, and Buddy has been by her side the whole time." But there's something even more amazing about this situation. You see, Buddy and Luna know each other. They've known each other since they were both babies themselves. As the adults explained the extraordinary backstory, how Luna and Buddy had been raised together by the Garcias, their special bond, their separation and unexpected reunion, Tyler listened with rapt attention. His parents exchanged concerned glances, clearly understanding the implications before their son did. "So they're like brother and sister?" Tyler asked when they finished. "In a way, yes," Ellie confirmed. "They formed a family bond when they were very young, even though they're different species. And now Luna has her own babies and Buddy is helping her," Tyler said slowly, working through the situation with a child's straightforward logic. "That's right. Which makes our situation more complicated," Marcus said. "We know Buddy is your dog, Tyler, and he belongs with you. But right now he's also helping Luna with her newborn kittens." Tyler was quiet for a long moment, looking at the screen where Buddy could be seen gently nuzzling one of the tiny kittens that had squirmed away from its mother. The tenderness in the puppy's demeanor was unmistakable even to a child. "If we take Buddy away right now," Ellie explained softly, "it might be very hard for Luna and her babies, and it might be confusing for Buddy too." Mrs. Henderson placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder. "What Ranger Ellie is trying to say, honey, is that we might need to wait a little while before bringing Buddy home." Tyler's face crumpled momentarily, but then he surprised everyone with his response. "Like when Dad had to stay at the hospital with Grandma last year, we couldn't be with him because he needed to help Grandma get better first." "That's a very good comparison," his father said, clearly moved by his son's comprehension. "How long do the baby bobcats need help?" Tyler asked, turning back to Marcus. Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Bobcat kittens are very helpless when they're first born. They can't see or hear, and they rely completely on their mother. Luna is doing a good job, but having Buddy there seems to help her stay calm. In the wild, bobcat fathers don't usually help raise the kittens, so she's alone, except for Buddy. In a perfect world," Ellie added, "we'd give Luna and her kittens about 3 weeks. By then, the kittens would be stronger, more stable, and Luna would be more confident as a mother." 3 weeks? Mrs. Henderson looked concerned. "We're staying in emergency housing. Pets aren't even allowed there. We were counting on finding a pet-friendly rental once Buddy was back with us." "I understand," Ellie said, "and that's why we wanted to talk with all of you. This is an unusual situation that requires us to balance what's best for Buddy, what's best for Luna and her kittens, and what's best for your family." Tyler stared at the tablet screen for a long time, watching Buddy and Luna. Finally, he looked up, his expression serious beyond his years. "Can I go see them? Not to take Buddy yet, just to see him and tell him I'm okay." The request took the adults by surprise. Marcus exchanged a glance with Ellie, considering the implications. "We'd need to be very careful," he said slowly. "Wild bobcats are dangerous predators, especially mothers with newborns. Luna is unusual because of her history with humans and with Buddy, but she's still a wild animal." "What if we set up a way for Tyler to see Buddy without disturbing Luna?" Ellie suggested. "Maybe have Buddy come out of the den briefly while Luna is nursing." After some discussion, they developed a plan. They would set up an observation blind closer to the den, but still at a safe distance. When Buddy next emerged from the den, something he'd been doing periodically throughout the day, they would allow Tyler a brief supervised visit. As they walked carefully to the new location, Marcus quietly explained to the Henderson parents the full complexity of the situation. "We're in uncharted territory here," he admitted. "The bond between Luna and Buddy is extraordinary, scientifically speaking. We're concerned about the trauma of separation for both animals." "Are you saying we might not get our dog back?" Mr. Henderson asked, keeping his voice low so Tyler wouldn't overhear. No, that's not what I'm suggesting, Marcus clarified quickly. Buddy is your pet, and ultimately, he belongs with your family. But we need to handle the transition thoughtfully to minimize stress for all the animals involved. Luna has already experienced significant trauma in her life, and with newborn kittens, additional stress could be dangerous. What are you proposing? Mrs. Henderson asked. Ideally, a gradual transition. Short visits at first, progressively getting longer, allowing Buddy to divide his time between Luna and your family until the kittens are more developed and Luna is more confident. Eventually, Buddy would spend all his time with you, but Luna and her kittens would have been gradually prepared for his absence. That sounds reasonable in theory, Mr. Henderson said, but practically speaking, we're living in a shelter. Where would Buddy stay between visits? The Garcias have offered to help, Ellie interjected. Since they were involved in raising both animals originally, they understand the situation better than anyone. They've offered to provide temporary housing for Buddy during the transition period and to help transport him between your visits and his time with Luna. The adults continued discussing logistics as they reached the observation blind. Tyler, who had been walking ahead with Ellie, suddenly froze, pointing silently toward the den entrance about 50 yards away. Buddy had emerged and was stretching in the afternoon sunlight, his black coat glossy against the limestone backdrop. "Buddy," Tyler whispered, his voice catching. The puppy's ears perked up at the sound, his head turning in their direction. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, in a display of recognition that brought tears to Ellie's eyes, Buddy's tail began to wag frantically. "He remembers me," Tyler breathed, his face illuminated with joy. "Of course he does," Ellie said softly. "You're his person." But as Buddy took a step in their direction, a soft, chuffing sound came from the den entrance. Luna appeared, checking on her temporary co-parent. The Bobcat assessed the situation with alert yellow eyes, clearly aware of the humans watching from a distance. Buddy hesitated, caught between his bond with the boy and his commitment to Luna and her kittens. It was a moment that crystallized the extraordinary dilemma they faced, a perfect illustration of Buddy's dual allegiance and the delicate balance they would need to maintain in the days ahead. That moment of recognition between Buddy and Tyler, and Luna's watchful presence, set the tone for the complex days that followed. With the Hendersons' reluctant agreement, a transition plan was established. Tyler would visit Buddy daily, gradually increasing their time together while respecting Luna's needs and the vulnerable state of her newborn kittens. The Garcias arrived that evening, bringing their expertise in both wildlife rehabilitation and domestic animal care. Elena's face softened with emotion when she first spotted Luna through the observation equipment. "She's grown so beautiful," she murmured. "A fully mature wild bobcat now, but I can still see the kitten we bottle-fed." Miguel focused immediately on the logistics. "The critical period will be the next 2 weeks. If we can support Luna through this early stage of motherhood while gradually reintroducing Buddy to human care, we have a good chance of success for all involved." They set up a small tent near the observation blind, creating a space where Buddy could spend time with Tyler without being completely removed from Luna's vicinity. The scent connection would be maintained, allowing Luna to know Buddy was nearby even when he wasn't physically present in the den. The first official visit came the following morning. Elena, with her experience handling both animals, carefully approached the den while the others watched from the blind. She carried a special harness and long lead for Buddy, along with familiar scented items from when both animals had been in her care, a small blanket that held the mixed scents of the puppy litter and young Luna. "Luna," she called softly, her voice carrying the distinctive tone she had used during their rehabilitation. "Remember me, little one?" Luna appeared at the den entrance, her posture alert but not aggressive, her eyes fixed on Elena with clear recognition. Behind her, Buddy peeked out curiously, his tail beginning to wag as he caught Elena's scent. "Come, buddy," Elena called, kneeling and extending her hand. "Come say hello." The puppy looked back at Luna as if seeking permission, then trotted toward Elena with increasing enthusiasm. Luna watched carefully but made no move to stop him, instead turning back to check on her kittens inside the den. Once Elena had Buddy secured on the harness, she led him to the tent where Tyler waited anxiously with his parents. The boy's face lit up as Buddy rushed toward him, whining with excitement, and the reunion that followed brought tears to everyone's eyes. Even Marcus, who tried to maintain scientific objectivity, but couldn't help being moved by the display of pure joy from both child and puppy. "He remembers me," Tyler kept saying, laughing as Buddy covered his face with enthusiastic licks. "He really remembers me." "Of course he does," Elena assured him. "Dogs form very strong bonds with their people, especially dogs like Buddy who have what we call high attachment needs because of their early experiences." For 30 minutes, Tyler and Buddy played inside the tent, re-establishing their connection under the watchful eyes of the adults. Buddy was clearly delighted to be with the boy, but as the visit stretched on, he began glancing toward the den, his demeanor becoming increasingly distracted. "He's checking on Luna and the kittens," Miguel explained gently to Tyler. "He's formed a responsibility bond with them. In his mind, he's their protector." "Like how I'm supposed to protect my little cousin when we play together?" Tyler asked. "Exactly like that," Miguel confirmed. "He loves being with you, but he's also worried about his other family." When it was time to end the visit, Tyler showed remarkable maturity for his 9 years. "You need to go back and help Luna now," he told Buddy, holding the puppy's face between his small hands. "But I'll come back tomorrow, I promise." Elena led Buddy back toward the den, removing the harness before he trotted inside to rejoin Luna. Through the monitoring equipment, they watched as Luna sniffed the puppy thoroughly, detecting the scents of humans, and particularly Tyler. "This is a critical moment," Marcus murmured, watching intently. "How she responds to these foreign scents on Buddy will tell us a lot about her tolerance level." To everyone's relief, after her inspection, Luna simply settled back beside her kittens, allowing Buddy to resume his position as co-guardian. She showed no signs of rejection or agitation. "That's our first hurdle cleared," Marcus said, with evident relief. "She's accepting Buddy's interaction with humans without viewing it as a threat." Over the next several days, a routine developed. Each morning, Tyler would arrive with his parents for a 1-hour visit with Buddy. Elena would fetch the puppy from the den, and he would spend time playing with Tyler in the tent before returning to Luna and the kittens. In the afternoons, the Garcias would bring Buddy out again for feeding and basic care, using these sessions to gradually reintroduce him to the routines of domestic life. Luna seemed to accept this arrangement, apparently understanding that Buddy would always return to her. The Bobcat remained focused primarily on her kittens, who were growing stronger each day under her attentive care. "Her behavior is extraordinary from a scientific perspective," Marcus told Ellie as they reviewed footage from inside the den. "She's effectively co-parenting with a different species. Look here, she's allowing Buddy to groom the kittens, even trusting him to watch them briefly while she stretches her legs outside the den. This level of interspecies cooperation is unprecedented in wild settings." "Do you think she understands that he's gradually transitioning back to his human family?" Ellie asked. "That's the million-dollar question," Marcus replied. "Bobcats are intelligent predators with complex social understanding within their species. Luna's unique upbringing may have expanded that capacity to include relationships with dogs and even humans. But conceptualizing a gradual transition, that's asking a lot even of her." By the end of the first week, they increased Tyler's visits to twice daily, morning and evening, with the evening visits now taking place outside the tent in the open air, closer to Luna's den. During these sessions, Buddy would occasionally glance toward the den entrance, where Luna could sometimes be seen watching from a distance, evaluating but not interfering. "She's habituating to Tyler's presence," Miguel observed during one such evening visit, associating him with Buddy in a positive way. This progress encouraged the team to take the next step in their transition plan. On the 8th day, Tyler was permitted to approach the den entrance with Elena, keeping a respectful distance but close enough for Luna to clearly associate the boy's scent with Buddy's beloved human companion. Luna appeared briefly, regarding Tyler with alert yellow eyes. The boy, who had been carefully coached, remained still and calm, speaking in soft tones. "Hi, Luna. Thank you for saving Buddy and taking care of him. You're a good mama to your babies." The bobcat tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words, before disappearing back into the den. It wasn't acceptance exactly, but neither was it rejection, and that itself was remarkable progress. The situation wasn't without complications, however. On the 10th day, a new wildlife officer unfamiliar with the case arrived for a shift change and was alarmed to find civilians so close to a bobcat den with newborn kittens. His by-the-book insistence that the area be cleared and the bobcat family left completely undisturbed nearly derailed their careful progress. "This violates at least 6 different wildlife protection protocols," the officer insisted, reviewing their permits with a critical eye. "A wild bobcat with kittens needs complete isolation from human activity. Luna isn't a typical wild bobcat," Ellie argued, pulling up their documentation. "Her history and this specific situation require a customized approach." It took a conference call with the Regional Director of Wildlife Services, plus supporting statements from both Marcus and the Garcias, to convince the officer to allow their plan to continue, though he insisted on filing a special exemption report and remained visibly uncomfortable with the arrangement. "He's not wrong. From a standard wildlife management perspective," Marcus acknowledged after the officer had left. "What we're doing here is highly unorthodox. If Luna were any other bobcat, his concerns would be completely valid." Another challenge emerged as the Henderson family's housing situation became increasingly unstable. The emergency shelter was closing, and they were struggling to find affordable housing that would accept pets. "We might have to stay with my sister in Austin," Mrs. Henderson explained to Ellie with evident distress. "But that's over 3 hours away. We couldn't maintain daily visits with Buddy from there." This development threatened to force a premature end to their careful transition plan. If the family had to relocate suddenly, they would need to take Buddy with them, potentially traumatizing both the puppy and Luna by severing their connection too abruptly. Fortunately, Elena Garcia had a solution. "We have a small guest cabin on our property," she offered. "It's nothing fancy, just 1 bedroom with a pull-out sofa in the living room. But you'd be welcome to stay there until you find something permanent. That way, Tyler could continue his visits with Buddy, and we'd be close enough to maintain the transition plan." The Hendersons accepted this generous offer with tearful gratitude, moving into the cabin the next day. This new arrangement actually accelerated Buddy's progress, as he could now spend mornings with Luna and her kittens, afternoons with Tyler at the Garcia property, and evenings back with Luna, a schedule that seemed to satisfy both his attachments while gradually shifting the balance toward his human family. By the beginning of the 3rd week, Luna's kittens had reached a significant developmental milestone. Their eyes had opened, transforming them from helpless, blind newborns to curious, observant infants. This change accelerated their growth in other ways as well. As they began to explore the confines of the den, their movements still wobbly but increasingly purposeful. Marcus documented these developments meticulously, setting up additional cameras to capture the kittens' progress from multiple angles. The footage provided unprecedented insights into bobcat maternal behavior, particularly the unusual dynamic between Luna and Buddy. She's actually allowing him to babysit, Marcus noted with amazement as they reviewed footage of Luna leaving the den to hunt while Buddy remained with the kittens. Look at how the kittens respond to him. They treat him as a parental figure, not a threat or prey. Is that normal? Ellie asked, watching as one of the kittens pawed playfully at Buddy's tail. Normal? There's nothing normal about any of this, Marcus laughed. In the wild, a bobcat mother would never leave her kittens with another species, but Luna seems to have incorporated Buddy into her understanding of family. It's extraordinary. The transition plan continued to progress smoothly. Buddy now spent his nights at the Garcia cabin with Tyler, returning to Luna's den each morning. This arrangement seemed to satisfy both the puppy's attachments, to his human boy and to his bobcat family. Tyler had become an integral part of the team, showing remarkable patience and understanding for a child his age. He maintained a journal of his observations about Buddy and Luna, complete with carefully drawn pictures, which Marcus praised as excellent field notes. "You have good scientific instincts," Marcus told the boy as they reviewed the monitoring equipment together. "You notice details that others might miss." Tyler beamed at the compliment. "I want to be a wildlife scientist like you when I grow up. Or maybe a ranger like Ellie. I haven't decided yet." On the 18th day, with the kittens growing more active and Luna showing increasing comfort with the human's presence, Elena suggested the next step in their plan, allowing Tyler to observe the kittens directly, under carefully controlled conditions. "Luna has accepted Tyler's scent and presence from a distance," she explained during their morning briefing. "The next logical step is for her to associate him directly with the care of her kittens. If she accepts him in that context, it will strengthen the connection between her world and Buddy's human family." The plan was not without risk. Despite Luna's unusual tolerance, she was still a wild predator with maternal instincts. Any perceived threat to her kittens could trigger aggressive behavior. They developed strict protocols. Tyler would approach only with Elena or Miguel present, would maintain a safe distance from the den entrance, and would make no sudden movements or loud noises. That afternoon, they implemented the plan. Tyler, visibly nervous but determined, followed Elena along the now familiar path to Luna's den. Buddy trotted alongside them, seeming to understand his role as intermediary between these two worlds he inhabited. "Remember," Elena instructed Tyler softly, "move slowly, speak quietly, and follow my lead. If I tell you to back away, do it immediately without question." Tyler nodded solemnly. "I promise." They stopped about 15 feet from the den entrance, and Elena called Luna's name in the gentle tone she had used during the bobcat's rehabilitation. After a moment, Luna appeared, regarding them with alert yellow eyes. "Good girl, Luna," Elena said softly. "We've come to see how your beautiful babies are doing." Buddy whined softly and took a step toward the den, looking back at Tyler as if encouraging him to follow. Elena put a restraining hand on the boy's shoulder, not yet ready to allow him that close. What happened next astonished everyone watching from the observation blind. Luna disappeared back into the den, and moments later, re-emerged carrying one of her kittens by the scruff of its neck. With deliberate movements, she brought the kitten out into the dappled sunlight and set it down about halfway between the den entrance and where Tyler stood with Elena. "She's showing us her kitten," Elena whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Is this normal?" Tyler whispered back. "No," Elena replied honestly. "This is extraordinary." Buddy approached the kitten, gently nuzzling it, before looking back at Tyler expectantly. The message seemed clear. Luna was introducing her offspring, an unprecedented display of trust. Tyler looked to Elena for guidance. She nodded slightly, and together they took 2 careful steps forward, then knelt on the ground to appear less threatening. Tyler's face shone with wonder as he observed the small bobcat kitten. Its spotted fur still fuzzy, its eyes a cloudy blue that would eventually turn yellow, its tiny paws kneading the air as it tested its new surroundings. "It's so small," Tyler breathed. "What's that one called?" "We haven't named them," Elena explained. "They're wild animals that will eventually return fully to nature." Tyler nodded his understanding but couldn't resist adding, "I think that one looks like a Whiskers." Luna watched this interaction carefully, her body language alert but not aggressive. After a few minutes, she retrieved her kitten and returned it to the den, then brought out each of her other 3 offspring in turn, displaying them briefly before returning them to safety. "She's introducing her family," Miguel murmured from the observation blind. "I've never seen anything like it." This remarkable interaction became the new normal over the days that followed. Each afternoon, Tyler would visit the den with Elena, and Luna would bring her kittens out for brief periods of supervised socialization. The kittens grew increasingly curious about the human visitors, particularly Tyler, whose gentle voice and still posture seemed to reassure them. Buddy's role evolved as well. He became a bridge between the two worlds, sometimes leading the more adventurous kittens toward Tyler, other times herding them back toward Luna when they strayed too far. His understanding of both human and bobcat boundaries was uncanny, as if he genuinely comprehended the delicate balance they were maintaining. The situation was progressing even better than they had hoped, until the 23rd day, when an unexpected visitor arrived at the observation site. Dr. Vanessa Phillips, the regional director of Wildlife Services, pulled up in her government SUV just as Tyler and Elena were returning from their afternoon visit with Luna and the kittens. Her expression was grave as she exited the vehicle, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Reyes," she acknowledged Marcus with a curt nod. "I've reviewed Officer Wilson's exemption report, and I've come to assess the situation myself." Marcus straightened, immediately on alert. Vanessa Phillips was known for her strictly by-the-book approach to wildlife management. While she was respected for her knowledge and commitment, she was not known for flexibility when it came to regulations. "Dr. Phillips," Marcus greeted her, "we've been documenting everything meticulously. I'd be happy to show you our data and explain the exceptional nature of this case." "I've read your preliminary reports," she replied, her gaze shifting to Tyler, who stood half-hidden behind Elena. "What I'm particularly concerned about is the involvement of civilians, especially a child in such close proximity to a wild predator with offspring." "Dr. Phillips," Ellie stepped forward, "if you'll allow us to explain the full context." "The context," Dr. Phillips interrupted, "is that we have a wild bobcat that should be raising her young without human interference. Instead, we have multiple people, including a child, approaching her den daily, and a domestic dog being allowed to interact with wild bobcat kittens. From a wildlife management perspective, this is highly problematic." With all due respect, Miguel joined the conversation, identifying himself and Elena as licensed wildlife rehabilitators. "This is not a typical case. Luna has a unique history that I'm aware of her rehabilitation history," Dr. Phillips cut in, "which makes this situation even more concerning. An animal with previous human contact should be given extra space to reestablish wild behaviors, not subjected to continued interaction." Tyler, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. "But Luna wants us there. She shows us her babies because she trusts us, and Buddy helps her take care of them." Dr. Phillips's expression softened slightly as she addressed the boy. "I understand this is exciting for you, but wild animals need to remain wild. Our job is to protect them, sometimes from well-meaning human interference." "What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Phillips?" Marcus asked, his tone carefully neutral. She consulted her clipboard. "Effective immediately, all civilian access to the den site will cease. The dog will be permanently removed from the Bobcat's vicinity. Limited professional monitoring may continue for scientific documentation, but from a significantly increased distance. The declaration fell like a stone among the group. Tyler's face crumpled, and he looked desperately toward the adults for reassurance they couldn't provide. "That would be traumatic for both Luna and Buddy," Elena protested. "We've established a careful transition plan that—" "Mrs. Garcia," Dr. Phillips interrupted firmly, "wildlife management decisions cannot be based on anthropomorphic assumptions about animal emotions. We have protocols for a reason." As the adults argued, Tyler slipped away from the group, moving back toward the path that led to Luna's den. Buddy, sensing the boy's distress, followed closely at his heels. By the time anyone noticed their absence, they had disappeared into the underbrush, heading directly toward the one place they had been expressly forbidden to go. The adults' heated discussion about regulations and protocols came to an abrupt halt when Mrs. Henderson cried out, "Where's Tyler?" All eyes scanned the clearing, the boy's absence registering with a collective jolt of alarm. Buddy was missing too. "He was upset," Elena said, already moving toward the path. "He must have gone to the den." Dr. Phillips's face paled. A child approaching a bobcat den without supervision? This is exactly the kind of danger I was concerned about. "Arguing won't help," Marcus cut in. "We need to find them immediately, but calmly. A rushed approach could startle Luna." They moved quickly but cautiously along the path, Ellie in the lead with Elena close behind. The two women had spent the most time observing Luna and would be most likely to diffuse any potential tension. Marcus followed with the Hendersons, while Dr. Phillips and Miguel brought up the rear. As they rounded the final bend before the den clearing, Elena raised her hand, signaling everyone to stop. The scene before them froze them in place. Tyler sat cross-legged on the ground about 10 feet from the den entrance, completely still except for the slow, gentle movement of his hand as he stroked Buddy, who lay pressed against his side. Facing them, just outside her den, Luna sat in a relaxed posture, her 4 kittens tumbling and playing in the small space between her and the boy. No one spoke. No one moved. The tableau before them defied every wildlife management protocol, yet radiated a profound harmony that no one, not even Dr. Phillips, seemed willing to disrupt. They watched in astonished silence as one of the bolder kittens approached Tyler, wobbling on still unsteady legs. The boy remained perfectly still as the small spotted creature sniffed at his shoe, then placed a tiny paw on his knee. Buddy, showing remarkable restraint, made no move to interfere, though his eyes tracked the kitten's every movement. Luna watched this interaction with alert attention, but showed no signs of distress. When the kitten began to climb onto Tyler's lap, a move that would have triggered protective aggression in any normal wild bobcat mother, Luna simply stretched, yawned, and began grooming another of her offspring. "Impossible," Dr. Phillips whispered, the clipboard in her hands completely forgotten. "Not impossible," Marcus replied softly. "Just unprecedented." At that moment, Tyler noticed the adults watching. His expression revealed a mixture of defiance and concern, but he maintained his still posture, clearly understanding the delicacy of the situation. "Tyler," his mother called softly, fear evident in her voice. "You need to come back to us very slowly." The boy shook his head minutely. "If I move now, I might scare the kittens. Luna trusts me. She knows I won't hurt them." Dr. Phillips stepped forward, then stopped abruptly as Luna's gaze shifted to her, a look not of aggression but of clear assessment. The bobcat's ears twitched forward, her attention now divided between the newcomer and her kittens. "Dr. Phillips," Elena said in a barely audible voice, "please don't make any sudden movements. Luna doesn't know you." For several tense moments, No one moved. Then, with deliberate slowness, Tyler began speaking, his voice calm and reassuring. "It's okay, Luna. These are all friends. They want to help take care of you and your babies, just like Buddy and I do." To everyone's amazement, the Bobcat seemed to process these words. Her posture remained relaxed, though her eyes continued to track every small movement from the group of humans. "I need to show Dr. Phillips something," Tyler continued in the same gentle tone. He carefully reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object that Dr. Phillips couldn't immediately identify from her position. "Dr. Marcus gave me a special camera to record Luna and her kittens," Tyler explained, holding up what appeared to be a compact wildlife camera. "I've been helping with the scientific research. We're learning about how mothers take care of their babies and how different species can help each other instead of being afraid." This revelation surprised even Ellie and the Garcias, who exchanged questioning glances with Marcus. He gave a small, confirming nod. He had indeed provided Tyler with a simple recording device as part of the boys' scientific training, though he hadn't expected Tyler to use it in quite this way. "May I see what you've recorded?" Dr. Phillips asked, her tone noticeably softer. Tyler nodded, but made no move to stand. "I'll show you when the kittens go back inside. I don't want to disturb them while they're playing." As if on cue, Luna made a soft chuffing sound that caused the kittens to pause in their explorations. With wobbling steps, they began making their way back to their mother, including the bold one that had ventured onto Tyler's lap. Once they were all gathered around her, Luna herded them back toward the den entrance, occasionally looking back at the humans as if to ensure they remained in place. When the last kitten had disappeared into the den, Luna paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled humans before settling on Tyler. For a long moment, wild animal and human child regarded each other with what could only be described as mutual respect. Then Luna, too, disappeared into the darkness of her den. Only then did Tyler slowly rise to his feet, Buddy at his side. He approached the adults with a composure that belied his 9 years, the small camera clutched carefully in his hand. "I'm sorry I went off without permission," he said, addressing his parents first. "But I knew Luna wouldn't hurt me. She's my friend." Before his parents could respond, Tyler turned to Dr. Phillips and held out the camera. "You should watch this before you make Luna and Buddy stay away from each other." Dr. Phillips accepted the device, her professional demeanor softened by what she had just witnessed. The group moved back to the observation area, where they could review the footage on a larger screen. What Tyler had captured was remarkable, intimate footage of Luna's maternal behavior that no wildlife researcher had ever documented so closely. The camera had recorded Luna teaching her kittens to groom themselves, Buddy demonstrating surprisingly gentle play behaviors adapted to the kitten's small size, and most surprisingly, moments when Luna and Buddy seemed to communicate through subtle body language about the care of the young. "She talks to him with her eyes and her ears," Tyler explained as they watched Luna and Buddy coordinate to retrieve a wandering kitten. "And he understands. They have their own language." As the footage continued, Dr. Phillips's expression transformed from skepticism to wonder. Her extensive scientific background couldn't account for what she was seeing, a level of interspecies cooperation that defied conventional understanding of wildlife behavior. When the playback ended, silence hung over the group. Finally, Dr. Phillips spoke, her tone thoughtful. "In 22 years of wildlife management, I've never seen anything like this." She turned to Marcus. "You understand this violates every protocol we have for managing wild predator populations." "I do," he acknowledged. "But it also presents an unprecedented opportunity to expand our understanding of animal cognition and interspecies relationships. Luna isn't just tolerating human presence. She's actively incorporating Buddy and even Tyler into her maternal behavior patterns. That's revolutionary from a scientific perspective. Dr. Phillips glanced at Tyler, who was watching her intently, and then at the Hendersons, whose concern for their son was evident despite the extraordinary circumstances. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked Marcus. "A controlled continuation of the current arrangement, but with enhanced safety protocols and more rigorous documentation. We're already seeing a natural transition as Buddy spends more time with his human family. Luna appears to be accepting this gradual change." "And the boy's involvement?" Tyler spoke up before Marcus could answer. "I promised to follow all the rules. I only went by myself today because I was afraid you would take Buddy away forever, and that would make Luna sad." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "They're family to each other, like I'm family to Buddy. Families shouldn't be broken up if they don't have to be." Dr. Phillips studied Tyler for a long moment, then looked again at her clipboard with its pages of regulations and protocols. Finally, she set it down with a sigh that seemed to contain equal parts resignation and wonder. "I'll need daily reports," she said, "and additional safety measures that I'll outline. This remains an exception, not a precedent." She looked directly at Tyler. "And you, young man, will need to receive proper wildlife safety training before any further unsupervised visits." Tyler's face lit up. "Does that mean Buddy can still see Luna and the kittens?" "For now," Dr. Phillips conceded, "but under very specific conditions, and with the understanding that eventually Luna and her kittens need to return fully to their natural wild state." As the adults began discussing logistics, Tyler knelt beside Buddy, wrapping his arms around the puppy's neck. "Did you hear that, boy? You get to keep both your families a little longer." Buddy's tail wagged enthusiastically as if he understood every word. 6 weeks after Dr. Phillips' unexpected visit, the Limestone Ridge bustled with activity. A small team of wildlife researchers had established a professionally equipped observation station, replacing the makeshift blind with state-of-the-art monitoring technology. What had begun as an extraordinary anomaly had evolved into a groundbreaking research opportunity, drawing interest from wildlife behaviorists across the country. Luna's kittens were now actively exploring beyond the den entrance, their movements becoming more coordinated and purposeful with each passing day. Their spotted coats gleamed in the summer sunlight as they tumbled and played under their mother's watchful eye, their behaviors increasingly reflecting the wild predators they were destined to become. The transition plan for Buddy had progressed naturally. The puppy now spent only mornings with Luna and her kittens, returning to the Henderson family for the remainder of each day. Tyler had been officially designated as a junior research assistant, complete with a laminated ID badge that he wore with immense pride during his supervised visits to the observation station. "The most remarkable aspect," Marcus explained to a visiting colleague from the University of Montana, "is how the separation is evolving without trauma. Luna seems to understand that Buddy's primary attachment is shifting back to his human family. She's neither preventing it nor showing signs of distress." The visiting researcher, Dr. Abigail Chen, nodded thoughtfully as she reviewed the extensive data they had collected. "And you believe this understanding stems from her own experience with rehabilitation and release?" "That's our leading theory," Marcus confirmed. "Luna experienced a similar transition herself, from dependence on human caregivers back to wild independence. She may have a cognitive framework for this process that most wild animals would lack." Nearby, Ellie was reviewing trail camera footage with Tyler, teaching him how to identify individual wildlife by their movement patterns and physical characteristics. "See how this deer holds its head slightly tilted," she pointed out. "That's consistent across multiple sightings. It's likely the same individual." Tyler nodded seriously, making notes in his now well-worn journal. "Like how I can tell Luna's kittens apart even though they all have spots." "Exactly," Ellie smiled. "You have a good eye for those details." The boy had flourished in his role as junior researcher, his natural curiosity channeled into methodical observation and careful documentation. The wildlife team had been impressed by his patience and his intuitive understanding of animal behavior, qualities that couldn't be taught. Tyler looked up as Buddy trotted into the observation station, returning from his morning visit with Luna. The puppy had developed a remarkably reliable schedule, dividing his time between his two families with increasing independence. He no longer needed Elena to escort him between locations. He made the journey himself, his internal clock seemingly calibrated to the established routine. "How are they today, boy?" Tyler asked, kneeling to greet his dog. Buddy responded with enthusiastic licks and a wagging tail that seemed to convey all the information Tyler needed. "Luna's teaching them to stalk today," the boy announced confidently. "Buddy always gets extra excited when there's hunting practice." Marcus exchanged an amused glance with Dr. Chen. "Our junior researcher has developed some rather specific theories about canine-feline communication." "The interesting thing," Ellie added quietly, "is that he's often right. When we check the den footage later, we frequently find that Luna was indeed engaging in the behaviors Tyler predicted based on Buddy's demeanor." As summer progressed toward fall, Luna began taking her kittens on increasingly longer excursions away from the den. The monitoring team tracked these journeys through a combination of trail cameras and the small, unobtrusive tracking devices that Dr. Phillips had authorized for research purposes. The data showed Luna gradually expanding her offspring's territory, teaching them to navigate the landscape that would eventually become their hunting grounds. Buddy's visits to the den grew shorter and less frequent, a natural progression that seemed to suit both the puppy and the Bobcat family. By the time the kittens were 12 weeks old, he visited only every other day, and Luna had begun discouraging him from direct interaction with her growing offspring, a behavior Marcus interpreted as preparing them for independence. "She's raising them to be wild bobcats," he explained to Tyler when the boy expressed concern about Luna's increasingly distant behavior toward Buddy. "That's exactly what should happen. She's being a good mother by teaching them to be what they truly are." Tyler nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. "But she still remembers Buddy as her friend. She just can't show it the same way anymore." "That's very insightful," Marcus agreed. "The bond remains, even as their paths diverge." The Henderson family had settled into a new normalcy as well. Tom had found employment at a construction company rebuilding flood-damaged homes, and they had secured a small house just outside Whitefish, close enough for Tyler to continue his involvement with what was now officially called the Luna Project. The boys' school had embraced his unique extracurricular activity, even incorporating elements of his experience into science curriculum for his classmates. On a crisp October morning, 4 months after the flood that had set these extraordinary events in motion, the research team gathered for a significant milestone. Luna's kittens, now nearly full-grown and exhibiting independent hunting skills, were ready for the final phase of their journey toward complete wild status. The tracking devices would be remotely deactivated, and the observation equipment around the den would be removed. "Will we ever see them again?" Tyler asked, watching the team dismantle the cameras that had documented so many remarkable moments. "It's possible," Ellie told him honestly. "Luna's territory includes areas not far from here, but it's also possible that the kittens will disperse to establish their own territories further away. That's the natural pattern for young bobcats." Tyler absorbed this information with the maturity that had become his hallmark. As long as they're safe and free, that's what matters. The boy had insisted on bringing a special item for this final official visit, the small dinosaur toy he had originally sent with Ellie for Buddy during those first anxious days of separation. Now, under Marcus's supervision, Tyler placed it at the entrance to the den, which Luna and her family had already largely abandoned for a new location deeper in the wilderness. "It's a thank you present," he explained, "for taking care of Buddy when he needed help and for letting me learn about your babies." The simple gesture moved even the most scientifically minded members of the research team. Dr. Phillips, who had returned for this final day of the official project, placed a gentle hand on Tyler's shoulder. "You've taught us all something important," she said. "Sometimes the exceptions to our rules reveal the most profound truths about the natural world." 3 years later, Marcus Reyes stood at a podium in a crowded university auditorium, presenting the published findings of the Luna Project to an international conference on wildlife behavior. The study had generated significant scientific interest, challenging conventional understanding of interspecies relationships and cognitive flexibility in predator species. What began as an anomalous rescue during a flood event, he concluded, ultimately provided unprecedented insights into the capacity for cross-species cooperation, the complexity of maternal behavior in wildcats, and the cognitive adaptability of animals with mixed wild and domestic experiences. The implications for wildlife rehabilitation protocols and predator conservation strategies are still being explored. In the front row, Ellie Harmon sat beside a 12-year-old Tyler Henderson, now considerably taller but still recognizable by his thoughtful expression and the careful way he took notes in a journal, not unlike the one he had used years earlier. Buddy lay contentedly at his feet, now a mature dog but still alert and attentive. After the presentation, as researchers gathered around Marcus with questions, Tyler slipped away from the crowd. He made his way to a small exhibition in the lobby where photographs from the Luna Project were displayed. He stopped before the most prominent image, a powerful shot captured by one of their remote cameras, showing Luna carrying one of her kittens across a shallow stream, the young bobcat dangling securely from its mother's mouth in an echo of how she had once carried Buddy from the floodwaters. "They found each other again," said a voice beside him. Tyler turned to find Elena Garcia studying the photograph with him. "What do you mean?" he asked. Elena pointed to a smaller photo beside the main one, taken more recently by a trail camera in the preserve. It showed a mature female bobcat, unmistakably Luna by the distinctive spot pattern on her flank, moving along a game trail. In the background, partially obscured by foliage but clearly visible to the trained eye, was a young male bobcat following at a respectful distance. "That's one of her sons," Elena explained. "He's established a territory that overlaps with hers, unusual for male bobcats, who typically range much further from their birth area. They hunt separately but occasionally travel together." Tyler smiled at this evidence that family bonds persisted, even in the wild. "Do you think she ever thinks about Buddy?" Elena considered this thoughtfully. "I believe animals remember significant relationships, though not in the same way humans do. Somewhere in Luna's understanding of the world is the knowledge that boundaries can be crossed, that connection can exist across differences." As they spoke, Buddy raised his head suddenly, his attention fixed on the main doors of the building. His tail began to wag, picking up speed as the doors opened to admit a new visitor, Dr. Phillips, now the National Director of Wildlife Rehabilitation Standards, arriving late for the conference. "He still does that," Tyler said with wonder. "Seems to know when someone from those days is coming, even before they appear." "Some connections," Elena replied softly, "leave their mark forever." Outside the building, in the hills beyond the university campus, wild creatures went about their ancient patterns of survival, unaware of how one extraordinary exception, a pregnant bobcat who rescued a drowning puppy, had expanded human understanding of what was possible in the natural world. But perhaps in some fundamental way that transcended scientific explanation, they carried this wisdom already, that life's most profound lessons often emerge at the boundaries where different worlds meet, connect, and transform each other.